Hi, my name is Erica Aviles, and I will be introducing my teammates, JC Bravo, Jamie Cruz, and Gianna Rebour on our PESTLE analysis group project on the country Turkey. I am going to start off with the introduction and background on Turkey, along with an overview of the geopolitical context. Turkey is a dynamic and complex environment for businesses and investors. Its strategic location on the Eurasian landmass makes it a bridge between Europe and Asia, taking control over key energy routes, migration corridors, and military access points. As regional conflicts reshape power dynamics and international alliances, Turkey's ability to be placed as a vital crossroad between Europe, the Middle East, and Asia becomes increasingly significant. Turkey's ability to navigate these alliances and conflicts play a critical role in shaping the future regional order. Historical alliances. The strategic location of Turkey sits between Europe and Asia, which controls the Bosporus Strait. The NATO membership, formed in 1952, was the joining of NATO during the Cold War to align with the West against the Soviet threat. NATO's importance anchored the country in Western security structure, provided military support, and enhanced its geopolitical sector. Historical tensions. Cyprus crisis of 1964 strained U.S. and Turkey relations. The purchase of Russian S-400 missile systems challenged NATO's alignment. Greece tried to expand into Turkish land after World War I. When Turkey pushed back, a major war was started. This ended with the Treaty of Lausanne of 1923, and a population exchange occurred. Greeks in Turkey and Muslims in Greece were forced to move. Challenges that Turkey faces. The southeast region of Turkey is hard to control because of the mountains and the Kurdish population. The mountainous terrain limits mobility of government forces. The infrastructure development of roads is way more difficult. The Kurdish, they have their own language, culture, and long-standing nationalist aspirations. According to state policy, there are restrictions on the Kurdish language. The geography makes it harder for the central government to unify the whole country. And parts of the country are still picking up the pieces of the 2023 earthquakes, which caused 50,000 casualties, injured 107,000 people, destroyed 1.9 million housing units, and displaced 3.3 million people. To summarize the introduction, the geopolitical context of Turkey is influenced by its geographical position, being surrounded by conflict-ridden states such as Syria, Iraq, and Iran, and its forced navigation of a complex landscape that includes regional instability, ethnic tensions, and shifting alliances. Turkey's borders are both an asset and a liability, affording it significant strategic leverage, but still deeming it as being vulnerable to security challenges and humanitarian crisis.
Hello, I'm Gianna, and I conducted the political and economic analysis of Turkey. So, beginning with my political analysis, analyzing a country's politics is incredibly important for business considerations, as government stability, laws, and regulations affect how a company can operate and make profits. So, knowing these factors helps reduce risks, spot opportunities, and make smart choices about entering or growing in that market. So, Turkey's political structure has been established since 1923. Turkey has been governed under a parliamentary republic up until political shifts in 2013, which this was the year the ball got rolling for a full transition into a presidential system. And then between 2017 and 18, with the constitutional referendum and then elections the following year, it went into full swing. So our political analysis focuses heavily on the political system since 2013, since this is the time when the transition was initiated and most impactful. The Turkish constitution, which was reformed in 2017, as I mentioned earlier, was written as a secular democracy that supports the rule of law and maintains a multi-party system. But regardless of the transition into a presidential system, Turkey maintained its three political branches, but redefined the roles within them completely. So, the executive branch, inclusive of the president, is held by the head of state, President Erdogan. He's responsible to lead the Council of Ministers, draft budgets, issue presidential decrees, and then can convene the legislature. But since his administration as president, it's evident that the change in leadership has had a significant impact on the Turkish political system, as he's had more executive power. But this is something that's further discussed in my analysis a little bit more in depth. But following the president is the legislative branch, known as the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. So they consist of a unicameral parliament and are presently dominated by the Justice Development Party and the Nationalist Movement Party. So this branch passes laws, it ratifies international agreements, and it improves the national budget. And then finally is the judiciary branch, which is predominantly governed by three high courts, which is the Council of State, the Constitutional Court, the Court of Cassation, which are all governed through civil law but heavily influenced by Islam. So their role is to uphold laws and ensure checks and balances and interpret the Constitution. A major area to analyze when considering expanding a business into Turkey are the present and historic trends of corruption and political issues. Political instability and corruption can cause economic instability, lower consumer trust, and can create more uncertainty for businesses. With that being said, the corruption scandal of 2013 caused a major judiciary reshuffle and heavily set the trend for corruption within Turkey. But corruption has been rooted in strong executive dominance and has been prominent. More impactfully, it's directly correlated with political issues. So in this timeline and in my analysis, you'll see major political events and the corruption surrounding them and how they correlate with those political issues. These are related to imbalance in power, violence increases, and political interference, which has caused a decline in public trust in democracy and investment, which is not exactly the best climate to be considering a business development in. Since the political reshuffle began in 2013, there has been major reform in the constitution, economics, labor and wage, tax, and foreign investment. So analyzing a country's reforms is crucial when considering doing business because they can strongly affect things like government rules, protection of property rights, and access to markets, all of which influence how smoothly and profitable a business can run. So my analysis in Turkish reforms has led me to conclude that regulations and policies have mainly been rooted in economic development and sustainability and to be more assertive in foreign policy. But market stability, infrastructure, investment, climate, environmental regulations, and trade relationships are significantly impacted by reforms in these areas. Overall, based on the reforms enacted in Turkey in recent years, business development in the Turkish climate would be supported in these areas with the exception of constitutional reforms. Moving into the economic analysis of Turkey, understanding Turkey's economy is important for businesses to make smart decisions, spot risks and opportunities, and then create plans that fit the local market. So this will help companies adjust to changes and improve their chances of success. Turkey has a mixed economy, which means it has strong services and industrial sectors that have been driving its growth. Turkey's steady GDP growth of 2.7 shows a growing economy with expanding market opportunities, making it attractive for business investments. But strong tourism, which contributed 12% of Turkey's GDP, presents opportunities for businesses in hospitality, retail, and services catering to both domestic and international visitors. However, while overall unemployment is improving, the high youth unemployment rate indicates a large pool of available young talent, but also social challenges that businesses should take into consideration. Additionally, although inflation has decreased, it remains relatively high at 35%, which could increase costs and pricing volatility, meaning businesses should be wary of taking financial risks in Turkey. To conclude Turkey's economic overview, Turkey's tax policy includes personal income tax rates ranging from 15 to 40%, with a corporate tax rate of 25%. Overall, though, tax revenue is relatively low compared to other countries. To wrap up my economic analysis, in regards to trade and foreign policies, Turkey is an important center for businesses who want to focus on exports because of its participation in the EU Customs Union and its commercial relationships with major economies like China, Germany, Russia, and the United States. Its strategic location between Europe and Asia provides easy access to markets, but businesses do need to be aware of possible geopolitical obstacles. Thank you all for your attention, and now I'll hand it over to JC, who will present our social and technological analysis of Turkey.
Hi, my name is JC Bravo, and I'm going to be reporting on the social and technological aspects and factors of the PESTLE project. So, getting into the society in Turkey. Turkey has a population of nearly 86 million people. Its people are younger than most populations, especially in the Western world. The median age is about 32. This attracts businesses with a high labor-intensive and tech sector, such as housing, education, digital entertainment, and consumer electronics. Businesses that traditionally cater to older populations must now adapt their offerings to attract a younger, more tech-savvy consumer. Turkey's demographic is highly educated. Its literacy rate is at a 96.7%. Turkey's geographic location make it well versed in globalization, with many individuals speaking various languages. 30 languages other than Turkish are spoken within the country. Currently, Turkey is facing challenges like the rising unemployment rate. 24% in 2023 is now at 27% as of 2024. The inequality amongst men and women, with a lot of women's marches happening for the advocacy of women's rights within the country. Diminishing civil trust and a polarizing secular modernist value, so secular versus conservative views, divide the country. Turkey has a unique blend of Islamic tradition that helped to influence its politics, education, gender norms, and business practices. The increasing influence of these conservative values and the ruling AKP party has shaped a lot of debates over the freedom of expression and gender roles within the country. There's also an issue of the urban versus rural access to common goods, businesses, and education. More than 75% of Turkey's population now lives in urban areas, but with this, there's 25% that don't get to a lot of public goods and are not, and a lot of the public goods are being pushed towards cities, causing inequity in rural areas of the country. Now for technology. Technology in Turkey is growing fast, with 74.41 million internet users in Turkey as of January 2024. With this, startups in e-banking, e-commerce, and online shopping have boomed within the country, with businesses also looking for entrepreneurship in 5G, AI world, and other tech businesses. Turkey aims to stay one of the top 10 most technically advanced countries in the world. It was one in 2023 and plans to continue so in 2025. Part of its plans is to develop smart cities in urban landscapes such as Izmir, Bursa, and Konya, and other cities within the country. How does this all overlap? Well, there's much overlap between tech and social analysis of the country, with some of the leading concepts being the cultural tension between the secular and conservative mindset. Western ideologies are being brought over, and the younger generation are losing its conservative ideologies, leading to a divide between the youth and elder populations that have a more conservative ideal. Brain drain is also affecting the country. Youth are rapidly leaving, and 72.9% state that they would like to live in another country if they can. With this, they would be taking their education and skills with them, leading to an issue with its booming tech fields where there is no labor force to be able to help cushion the technological landscape that Turkey wants to have. Another issue is the education system. There are major reforms happening, a lot of investment in this section, but there's still persistent quality and access issues due to the divide of rural demographic and and urban settings. Urban settings are getting a lot of the education, and it's leaving less rural areas, more of the rural areas needing advancement in its education systems to align with the rest of the country.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Cruz, and I'll be walking you through the final two components of our PESTLE analysis, the legal and environmental factors. After that, I'll wrap things up by discussing how these insights apply specifically to tech companies, and then finish with a conclusion on Turkey's overall business environment. From a legal standpoint, tech companies operating in Turkey must navigate a structured labor framework. Employment contracts are mandatory and typically require detailed terms on work hours, which are capped at 45 per week. The government sets a national minimum wage, and companies must comply with regulations on paid leave, health insurance, and social benefits. Termination requires just cause, and severance pay is often owed based on tenure. Hiring foreign employees involves securing work permits through a regulated process. Finally, occupational health and safety laws are strict, requiring employers to implement workplace risk assessments and safety training. Legally, Turkey offers a relatively fast and business-friendly setup process. The country is open to both local and foreign entrepreneurs, with no nationality restrictions on ownership. Common legal structures include joint stock companies and limited liability companies, both widely used in the tech industry. The registration process is centralized and can be completed online within a few days. Depending on the business activity, specific licenses or sectoral approvals may be required. For foreign workers, permits must be obtained through the Ministry of Labor, adding a layer of compliance for international staffing. Turkey's legal framework supports foreign investment through Law Number 4875, which guarantees equal rights for foreign and local investors. While most sectors are open, a few, like defense and energy, are considered sensitive and require special approval. Foreigners can fully own property and businesses with no local partnership required. The government also offers legal incentives such as tax breaks and R&D support to attract tech investment. Capital mobility is protected, allowing free transfer of profits abroad. For disputes, Turkey recognizes both local courts and international arbitration, ensuring legal recourse for foreign firms. Now moving on to environmental. Turkey's environmental landscape poses unique risk. The country has frequent earthquakes that can disrupt infrastructure and operations. Its location near conflict-prone regions adds geopolitical instability that may affect trade and investor confidence. Turkey relies heavily on imports for tech hardware and energy, making it vulnerable to supply chain shocks. A weak currency further inflates import costs. While foreign relations remain strong with key partners, regional tensions and environmental instability require firms to build resilient, risk-aware supply chains and contingency plans. Turkey enforces strict environmental regulations aligned with EU standards, impacting tech companies significantly. The waste, electrical, and electronic equipment regulations and restriction of hazardous substances law require proper disposal and limited use of toxic materials and electronics. The Turkish REACH regulation mandates chemical safety compliance for imported and manufactured goods. Additionally, the upcoming climate law and emissions trading system will impose new sustainability targets. Companies must also navigate environmental permitting and impact assessments, especially for manufacturing or data center operations. Environmental regulations tied to trade are tightening in Turkey. The upcoming EU carbon border tax could raise costs for energy-intensive imports. Turkey has responded with higher import duties, a lower tax-free threshold for goods, and an extra 20% tax on luxury items, which may include high-end tech products. Customs procedures are now stricter, requiring detailed documentation and compliance checks. This increases the risk of shipment delays or rejection, making it critical for tech firms to streamline logistics and ensure full regulatory compliance at the border. Application. For tech companies, Turkey presents both significant opportunities and operational challenges. Politically, the government supports digital innovation through incentives and tech zones. Economically, Low labor costs are attractive, but inflation and currency raise financial risks. A young, digitally engaged population drives demand for tech products, while growing infrastructure supports AI, cloud, and e-commerce. However, firms must comply with evolving data laws, import duties, and environmental regulations like e-waste and REACH. Success depends on localizing operations, managing risk, and align with Turkey's regulatory and market dynamics. In conclusion, Turkey offers a promising yet complex landscape for companies. Its strategic location, young digital population, and government-backed innovation make it attractive for growth and regional expansion. But success depends on managing risks tied to economic instability, evolving regulations, and geopolitical tensions. Firms that localize operations, ensure legal compliance, and build resilient supply chains will be well positioned to thrive. With the right strategy, Turkey can serve as both a profitable domestic market and a strategic launchpad into surrounding high growth regions. Thanks for watching. Bye.